everyone. Welcome to OC Tanner's Culture by Design podcast, where we discuss the research, practices, and strategies to help employees everywhere thrive at work. My name is Annika Rapp, and we're joined by Christina Chau, who writes and shares our very popular 5 Workplace Culture Trends content, and surprise, if you don't already know, also writes our major research reports like the Global Culture Report and our next installment of the State of Recognition Report. So thanks for joining us today, Christina.
Thanks for having me, Annika.
Christina has actually been in this space for over 15 years and has extensive experience reporting on culture and employee recognition insights and trends. For 2026, and like every year, she finds 5 key things that employees want from work. And this year it included things like inspiration, human connection, and integrated employee recognition, to name a few. If you want to learn more, you can go to octanner.com. She's joining us today to give us a little bit more insight into each of these trends and to answer a few questions from HR leaders like you. So now to get into the meat of the episode, Christina, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your process. And like I mentioned, you've been doing this for a very long time. It's a very popular series of content for us to, look at what's happening in the next year for employees and HR leaders. How do you go about finding the most impactful workplace culture trends?
Yeah, I love writing the 5 workplace culture trends every year. I've done it a few times now, and it's just really fun to kind of consolidate all of the year's research findings and trends and feedback from HR that we're hearing out there. So my first source is always the Global Culture Report, which, as you mentioned, I am lucky enough to be part of writing and is published by our wonderful OC Tanner Institute. We release it every year in September, so it has all the latest research and insights and findings on workplace culture for the next year. And fortunately, because it's published in September and I write the 5 culture trends piece around November, I get to use all of that great research. I also used this year our State of the Recognition Industry research. We published our first one this past spring, and as you mentioned, we'll do another one in 2026. But it takes an in-depth look at recognition best practices, which is a great source for us as well. And then I just see what's happening out there in the news, in HR forums, LinkedIn pages, what other industry peers like Deloitte or Aon or Gallup are talking about. I ask our institute what they're hearing as they work with clients and companies. And then I look to our own clients and I see when I'm writing up case studies, what are they doing out there in the workplace? What new innovations do they have in place that we could leverage in our trends piece?
Of your 5 culture trends you identified for 2026, which one was the one that you found maybe most surprising or you weren't really expecting to see on a trend that employees would really like from their workplace?
Yeah, so it was actually the first one. The trend was that teams and not just leaders inspire. There's so much research out there, including our own research, honestly, in past global culture reports that talk about the impact and importance of leaders. So for decades, right, all we've been hearing and all we've been saying is that leaders are responsible. They're responsible for building workplace cultures. They connect employees to purpose. They help set that vision and the goals. They coach and they mentor. And even more recently, after COVID, they're tasked with building employee well-being, both physically and mental well-being, and preventing burnout. And so if you think about all the books and the articles and the podcasts on how to be an inspirational leader, right? All the examples that people talk about, they, put Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, Indra Nooyi from Pepsi, Sheryl Sandberg, all on this pedestal of being an inspirational leader. These are big, big personalities. But truly inspirational leaders in the workplace who are born to inspire like them, they're rare, right? They don't happen very often. Most leaders are just employees like you and I who got promoted a bunch of times and end up in that leadership role. So in addition to all of this administrative, operational management, strategic roles that we have and expect of leaders, we're expecting them to be inspirational. And that's a lot. So when our institute researchers found the impact of teams was actually higher than leaders when it came to providing inspiration at work, and that employees look to one another for inspiration and not their leader, I was really surprised because it goes against what we've been saying for years, what everyone's been saying for years. But it makes sense, right? Your peers are the ones that you work with every day, that you have conversations with, that you bounce ideas off of, and that you innovate with. And if you have a huge team, particularly, you may only talk to your leader like once or twice a week, or maybe once a month, depending. But you work side by side with your peers every single day. So naturally, you'll have those conversations or share ideas and be inspired by them. And so that was really surprising to me. It also made me realize how important it was to have peer-to-peer recognition tools. Because again, a lot of companies out there have tools for leaders to recognize their people. And that's great and definitely needed. But what companies really need is recognition tools for peers to recognize one another because they are the ones that are sharing ideas and inspiring each other. And they need to express gratitude for that.
it is your peers that you're interacting with, I feel like sometimes more on a day-to-day basis than your leaders. So the fact that, you could get recognition from someone that sees your day-to-day work or that you're partnering very close on a project with, sometimes those leaders just can't see everything. They can't be everywhere at once. So that kind of importance of teams and peers and especially peer-to-peer recognition, I think is a really interesting one. And it's very, very cool to see that the research backs that up.
Yeah. And I talk to clients a lot because I write a lot of case studies on our clients and I highlight their recognition journeys to success. And I hear the same thing over and over again. I hear it's our people. What makes your workplace culture great? It's always our people. It's our people that make it great, that build it, that, make everything possible. Our people is what make this a fun place to work. So our people is why culture is so important. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that it's the people that are inspiring, right? It's not your processes, it's not your tools, it's not, again, it's not just your leaders. Your leaders can be inspirational, but really it is the people that foster that sense of inspiration and belonging and community.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I feel like we always talk about during your process of gathering these trends, looking into the research, those sorts of things, is whittling it down to only these top five kind of trends. And I'm sure there's many, many, many more out there that you've looked at or considered adding to the list. I was actually kind of curious, what was one trend that you almost added this year?
Yeah, a really fun part of this writing this piece is really trying to cull through all the research and all the findings and all the trends out there and organizing things and trying to figure out what are the top ones for that year. There's so many interesting trends out there. And, Annika, you know me, I'm a long form writer. I write the Global Culture Report. I could write for days. I could talk for hours about all the trends. But I realize that our readers and our listeners probably don't want to listen to a 6 hour webinar. So we definitely condense it more into, five of these trends. And just because a trend didn't make the list doesn't mean it's not important or that it's not prevalent out there because the workplace is just changing so much. It's evolving so quickly. There's so much out there going on in our space. And that's what makes our work fun and interesting and challenging. But one trend that our VP of marketing had been hearing a lot from clients that I thought about including and ended up not is this idea of a high performance culture. So many clients are asking, how do I build a high performance culture? There's so many pressures out there with AI, all the economic challenges we're facing, the increased global competition, and companies are really looking at how they can have high productivity, high innovation, high performance, right, without burning their people out. And often the way they achieve this high performance comes as a detriment to employee health and well-being, company morale and culture. We hear that a lot. We see that a lot in the news. The whole forced return to the office debate, right, is a great example of this. We want people to be more productive, collaborative, innovative, but perhaps that's hindering on people's well-being. Luckily, our research shows from the Global Culture Report that productivity and well-being can go hand in hand. So you don't have to have one at the sacrifice of the other. And we call it healthy performance cultures. And these are cultures where there's a lot of high expectations of employees and employees are doing a lot of great work, but it comes with a lot of organizational support. So leaders are checking in, companies are providing resources to employees to do their jobs well. They're giving training to improve skills. There's things like open communication, clear expectations, regular feedback. Employees have a voice in decisions, all of the great things that we know, employees want in the workplace. They feel valued, they feel seen. And because companies are seeing that being an employer that provides the high support with the high expectations actually works, they're kind of leaning more towards doing that. So what we hear in the news often isn't what everyday companies are doing. We hear kind of the extremes, but what we're finding is that companies are looking to provide this high performance culture with healthy support behind it. We have a great chapter on this in this year's Global Culture Report, if anyone wants to learn more, so you can find that on our site. But if we had 6 trends, that one would have definitely made the list. And we could do a whole, podcast series on all the other workplace trends that didn't make the list, but that was one that was very close.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the nice thing too, is it's not like we didn't talk about it. It is available on our website. It's available in the Global Culture Report. But one thing too that we've kind of been talking about and mentioning throughout the episode so far is that you host a webinar on this topic. It's very interactive. It's a lot of fun. It's great to see people's best practices, their personal ideas from their organization, kind of how they apply various trends and recognition tools and things like that. And we actually get a lot of questions from that webinar that we might not have a lot of time to answer live. So I actually wanted to take the time today to answer some of those questions that maybe we didn't get a chance to chat about. And if you want to listen to the webinar, head to octanner.com. It's available on demand. So let's spend some time talking about those right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I love about that webinar is the interaction between all the listeners and having them bounce ideas off of each other and ask questions and share best practices. It just makes it more fun.
Absolutely. One of the very prominent themes, I think, from this webinar this year is especially tied to kind of our theme of human connection and all those sorts of things, is a lot of people were asking about how we can help our offline employees or our deskless employees or frontline employees feel more included in employee recognition initiatives and general culture initiatives in 2026. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I noticed a few folks on the webinar had asked that question. So I'm glad we have a chance to answer it now. Just as background for those who may not know, when we talk about offline employees, we talk about the 80% of the world's workforce who do not work behind a desk. They do not work at a computer. They do not have those online tools available. They don't use their phones at work. And there are entire industries that this applies to: retail, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, construction, oil and gas. Anyone that is kind of your frontline worker that isn't working at a desk. And so while we have all this great culture building tech and AI and platforms for our online workers and people that have access to technology and computers, a lot of companies don't provide the same for their offline employees. We can't forget these essential workers, right? These are really your essential frontline workers. And if you're in the middle of an oil rig in the middle of the ocean, you're not going to be able to just log onto the platform and give recognition or log onto your platform and check your benefits. So we need to just make sure that any culture building tools that companies are using are accessible to this 80, what we call the 80% workforce, whether that's in paper form, or if you give them time on the clock to access tools, whether it's like a shared kiosk or a shared computer, or give them a mobile app so they can access some of these programs. Leader tools that can be shared in like morning huddles or team meetings that they have regularly, or even like shared screens in your break rooms, lobbies, locker rooms, etc. Wherever you are sharing information, you have to be able to share tools for your culture building efforts. Another aspect of that is to provide them time and autonomy and flexibility to use those tools. So in our focus groups, a lot, we hear so many stories of employees who have to like clock out to go, fill out their open enrollment for the year, and then clock back in, right? And if they don't clock back in time, they get dinged off of their pay. We want these 80% workforce employees to feel like they have the same accessibility to your online tools as the folks that work at a computer. And another aspect of that is recognition. Workers in the 80% often feel unseen, unappreciated, and unvalued, even though they're some of your most important part of your workforce. So remembering to celebrate their accomplishments, to provide recognition for their contributions and hard work, to share stories of what they're doing across the organization so everyone can see their achievements. And again, with recognition, you got to have the right tools. So mobile app, shared kiosk, physical thank you notes, physical nomination forms or certificates. A lot of companies use pins and symbolic awards, custom awards. They have fun appreciation stations where they have thank you notes and, cool things for people to show appreciation, or even making sure it's built into the flow of work, right? The tools that they're using. So a great example, our healthcare clients have a lot of programs that they use to take care of patients, or tools that they use that their leaders use to round every day, around the unit floor. A lot of them incorporate their recognition platform into these tools, into these programs, into this tech so that their employees can use it while they're working in their flow of work. And then let offline employees choose the awards that best suit their needs and interests. A lot of times they love things that they can show off to family members or to friends, things like branded or symbolic awards to help them feel connected to the company, things like swag boxes, company swag. They're really popular because employees can wear them. They don't have a place necessarily, they don't have a desk at work to display like a trophy or a plaque, right? So a lot of things like a backpack or, corporate t-shirts or pins that they can pin on their bags that they bring to work, things they can use around their home. A lot of those things are really meaningful to employees in the 80% because they don't have a place to display, but they can wear those types of things to work. And it just makes them feel proud of the company. And I say the last thing is just ensure leaders know how to recognize their offline employees, how they want to be appreciated. It may be different given their work situation compared to someone that's working at a desk all day. So just get to know them and personalize that recognition for them.
Those are all great tips. And I think the nice part too is it's not like there's limited options. There's plenty of things you can do if you're just a little bit creative to make sure that your offline employees and the 80% feel that appreciation and have access to that recognition as well. And just general culture initiatives. So thank you for talking through all of those. I think another thing too, again, that just keeps going on that theme of just feeling like, we're all connected at work and as human beings. There are a lot of great leaders out there that are doing their best to kind of show employees that they see them, appreciate them, they value them. One of the questions that popped up during the webinar is how do we make sure that employees feel cared for? Or how do we make sure that everything that we're doing for employees comes across in a way that is impactful to them? Do you have any tips for that?
So I think care has to be genuine, right? Forced care won't work, just like forced recognition doesn't work. And care is more than just feeling an emotion or sentiment, and it's definitely more than a company program or culture initiatives. Communicating about care in everything you do and demonstrating it is really how you're going to show care. The messaging is really important here. We provide these offerings and benefits and programs because you know they're important to you and that they'll help you in your personal life. But you also need to take action to show you care. So in our global culture report in 2025, we found that one-third of employees were sadly just merely surviving at work, not thriving, but barely surviving. So if you really want to demonstrate care in the workplace, you need to meet their basic needs. And we found those basic needs are very basic. They're things like competitive compensation and health benefits to provide that financial stability and meet those survival needs that they have. And then things like career development, skill building, flexibility, recognition to provide that sense of long-term care and stability. Recognition is a great way to help employees feel seen and valued, to provide that stability that they're looking for, and to show that the company cares about them. So if you want employees to see the ways you show care, focus on those things. Focus on things like adequate compensation, health benefits, career development, flexibility at work, and recognition. The research shows that those are the areas that employees see their organizations demonstrating care. Funny enough, we found that our research shows that a long list of perks and benefits just overwhelms employees. And actually cutting them down and focusing on those areas that demonstrate meeting their basic needs actually shows care a lot more effectively than offering every benefit under the sun. So I would say if companies really want to show care, make sure you're showing it in a way and demonstrating it in a way that meets employees' needs.
I like that as well because I feel like, there's an opportunity there to ask employees, what is it that you actually want? And what is it that you're using? And what is it that is making the most impact for you? And then having the HR team deliver on that or change some things to make sure that it's very obvious that, that those things are available to them if they're not already available, reminding them that they're available, those sorts of things. So I think provides a really nice opportunity for employee listening and acting on that feedback. And I also think too that ties in very nicely with one of the trends you identified where it's, talking about process over programs, where these sorts of things are in their daily lives, in their daily experiences at work, whether it be recognition, whether it be, feeling like they can reach out to somebody if they're struggling with their mental health, or they have resources to talk to somebody about their financial well-being, whatever it might be, those sorts of things where they know that's part of their daily experience versus something that feels like it's entirely separate and it's hard to access and maybe it's there, maybe it's not. So it feels more ingrained in that process as well. So I think that's a good one. One of the other questions we got from our audience was what kind of tips do you have for how to make recognition feel authentic and meaningful this year?
Yeah, I think it goes along with demonstrating that care. A lot of times leaders are recognizing, but the way they're recognizing doesn't come across as genuine. And employees know that. Employees can feel that. We know when someone's thanking us out of the kindness of their hearts and when someone's thanking us because they have to. So I would say, all the recognition best practices that we talk about in our global culture report, in our, content, in our articles, if you follow those, you really can make recognition feel more authentic. So those best practices are things like making it personal and sincere, making sure you're recognizing in a timely manner, being specific in what the individual did. When it's personal and sincere, it means you put thought into it, right? You took the time to get to know the individual. You found out how they like to be recognized. You took the time to think of and detail the specific ways that the person contributed. And you thought about not just the results, but the effort that went in behind that results. You took the time, it's like receiving a Christmas card or birthday card from your friend versus receiving it from like your bank, right? We all get those birthday or Christmas cards from our bank or another organization that has that generic message. It's nondescript. But then when your friend sends you a Christmas card, they put some heart in that message, right? They're more specific, they connect with you, they're more authentic. I think this is why using AI and recognition is just very tricky. You want to use AI to help you, right? If you're writing a message and you're not a good writer, you don't feel confident in your writing skills, you want AI to kind of help beef up that message. But you don't want AI to write the entire message for you because then it comes across as completely generic and insincere. Another way to make recognition feel authentic is to do it when someone does great work or go above and beyond. A lot of organizations out there, they wait and they only recognize at the end of the year or maybe on Employee Appreciation Day or during hospital week. And those are all fantastic. You want to recognize people on those holidays, but if you're only recognizing during those times, it often feels like it's maybe more forced, right? Or you're doing it to check off the box. When you're recognizing throughout the year, when employees don't expect it, or when someone goes and does something out of the ordinary or puts a above and beyond effort into it or helps a coworker, those feel more heartfelt. They feel more thoughtful and they feel more genuine. And I think ultimately for leaders out there who are maybe afraid to recognize or hesitant to recognize, I think when it comes from a place of truth and heart, and it's given because the giver wants to give and not because they have to, it's going to feel real. So even if you aren't perfect and you're creating a recognition moment or your recognition message is not perfectly written and inspirational, if it comes from the heart, employees will know that and they'll feel that authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very obvious when someone has put heart into something and using AI to maybe help rather than replace them, I think is a really important part of that. Because I think that's, again, one of the trends you identified is how we use AI, especially in culture, especially in recognition efforts. And I think it's definitely a tool that can help us, but it should not in any way be something that replaces genuine care and authenticity in who we are as people. So that's
Absolutely.
all great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think kind of on that recognition train, one kind of question we had as well is what are some of the ways that maybe tips you have for integrating, I guess, big recognition moments where we're kind of celebrating a big year, whether it be a ceremony, a banquet, an end of year holiday, whatever it might be, with what we might call, I guess, quote unquote, regular recognition or daily recognition or something like that. What's kind of your tips or ideas for how we kind of have that more holistic recognition strategy for this year?
Yeah, so one of the things we see a lot of companies do is they have one recognition platform to recognize the peer-to-peer, everyday great work recognition, right? That happens. And they have a completely separate system or team to recognize some of those bigger awards. So it could be annual awards, president's awards. It could be the end of year holiday, banquet or sales types of awards. And that often feels disjointed, especially when all of your other recognition is tied to this peer-to-peer platform. So we always recommend just aligning the two, right? Build in those end of year awards, the President's Awards, the Pinnacle Awards, build all of those into your peer-to-peer recognition system. Because that way you have one system where everyone knows how they can nominate for a President's Award, how a President's Award would get approved, and then actually giving the award. So whether you use, points through your recognition platform to give out an award or a certificate that you print out to recognize a President's Award, you can have your event separately. You could have a red carpet event, a nice gala dinner, whatever it is that you normally do for these big Pinnacle Awards. But if you put it into your recognition system and have one platform for it, it just makes everything easier. It makes it easier to track the recognition being given. It makes it easier to track who's being recognized and share that across the organization. I would say a great example of this is AAA Auto Club Enterprises. They're doing that right now. They're aligning their President's Elite Awards with their Live Legendary recognition strategy and platform that they use on Culture Cloud. Delta Airlines uses their Unstoppable Together platform to give points for their Chairman's Club Awards, which is a really exclusive award that they give for the best of the best. And they have their own red carpet event, but they still use their Unstoppable Together platform with Culture Cloud to, facilitate the nomination and the awarding of the award. At OC Tanner, we have our Platinum and our President's Awards through Culture Cloud. So someone can nominate, approve, give points. We offer a symbolic award as well for a President's Award, but it's all still tracked and tied into that system. Integrated recognition is just extremely powerful. And so if you're able to integrate as much of your recognition activity as possible into one platform, it just makes it easier and more impactful for everyone.
Absolutely. And I feel like too, those sort of big awards ceremonies, there's always a place for them, or these big kind of like recognition events, there's always a place for them because those are just fun to have people come together and see that. And I think too, like when I see people at our company meetings at OC Tanner being recognized with the President's Award or some of those big awards that are very prestigious, it's very inspiring and it makes me want to turn around and immediately give recognition or whatever it might be. But I know that it's in Culture Cloud because I use it. So it's like that kind of feedback loop a little bit of here's this amazing recognition moment. It's going to inspire more people to do it. And we only have to do it in one place, which makes it a lot easier. So it's not like a ton of different tools you have to figure out. But
Yes, it's easier for employees to remember, right? How to go about doing it too. Yeah.
absolutely. I feel like a couple of things we've talked about between this recognition stuff, leaders, teams, all these sorts of things, and just generally feels like this year there's a big theme around human connection and making sure that we feel like we're all seen as people at our workplaces. I just wanted to ask why you think human connection is so important right now.
I think in the age of AI, in a world where we have technology everywhere, I mean, I was thinking about it the other day when I was flying out to Salt Lake to see everyone. All the airlines are providing free, fast speed Wi-Fi right now. So you can't even go on a flight and be like, I'm offline because you don't have an excuse. There's online capabilities. Starlink can get you internet in the middle of the ocean now, right? So we're all inundated with these constant notifications and demands for our attention and updates, and disruptions. But amongst all that information that's coming at us that we can provide, all the vehicles out there for connection with your phone and your computer and all that tech, I think people still just want human connection. They want to talk, they want to interact, they want to work with other humans, and they want to be seen and valued by other humans. It's a very basic human need if you go back to, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think it comes out the more technology is proliferating in the workplace. I remember a few years ago when the research was first coming out on Gen Z, and our research team actually found that Gen Z wanted to interact with other people in person, and talk to other people in person and not on their phones. And as a millennial, that was, I'm a millennial, that was surprising and shocking to me because I don't answer the phone. I'd rather text someone than answer the phone. I don't want to talk to anyone. But Gen Z wanted to talk to people. They wanted that interaction at work. They didn't want to hide behind a screen. And I think it's because they've grown up with that technology. They know that it's there and it's not novel to them anymore. But what's novel to them is that human connection. So it's a basic human need to be with one another, to interact with one another, to have that community at work. Even outside of work, that human connection is crucial. So I mentioned on that webinar, if you look at all the 5 trends, all of it is really about connection, about human connection, in the middle of AI and technology out there. And I think if companies keep that in mind, they can build workplace cultures that have great communities and strong communities that will help them, be more profitable, long lasting, attract the best talent in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, just thinking about that, like with all the advancements in technology, with AI, with all these sorts of almost pressures to use these technologies as to your best ability or those sorts of things, I think a lot of people kind of talk about. It feels like we're getting closer and closer and closer to computers and far further and further away from collaborating with other people. We're collaborating with ChatGPT instead of collaborating with our colleagues that have been in the
Yes.
industry for 15 years, Christina, that I need your help with. Those sorts of things. I feel like I get better ideas out of my Christina GPT than I do my.
It's interesting, Annika, because I hear all these news stories out there about people using AI to have conversations. Like people are so lonely and they're so desperate for connection. They're using AI to have a human connection. And I think
Yeah.
that just goes to show how much human connection is needed, particularly in the workforce, where
Mhm.
people, want to be inspired by one another and they want to, they have to collaborate and innovate. And the computers are just not going to do that for us. So.
Well, we've come to the end of our time, Christina. Thank you for joining us today and chatting through all of these. And I feel like, too, it's nice to have a little bit of an insight into your process and so answering some of these questions that maybe we don't get to talk about at length. I just wanted to provide a little bit of a recap. We talked about a lot of different things, lots of different questions, but I also just want to bring it back to our main workplace culture trends for 2026 that Christina's identified. I think the biggest thing and the thing that we talked about is that human connection is so important. There's great tech out there that can enrich both connection and appreciation at work, but we don't want it to replace genuine, authentic human moments. So please use AI responsibly in your culture and recognition initiatives this year. And also, one thing that we see too is that employees are asking for a lot from their workplaces now, and I'm sure we're feeling that pressure in all of the HR teams that are listening here. They want inspiration from their teams, from their leaders, their employers, and they want time to connect with each other, time to recognize each other. So make sure to prioritize and encourage those experiences at work this year. And our final takeaway for today is to please go read or watch or listen to Christina's 5 Culture Trends for 2026 content on our website at octanner.com for more insights and actionable takeaways to implement at your organization this year. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Culture by Design, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of OC Tanner's Culture by Design podcast. OC Tanner is the global leader in software and services that improve workplace culture through meaningful employee recognition experiences. If you want your organization to become a place where people can't wait to come to work in the morning, go to octanner.com.